begin. For those of you who are just joining on the call, this meeting is being recorded. So just an FYI. Thank you, everybody, for attending today's supplier onboarding / PaymentWorks workshop. We're excited to be able to provide this overview and sort of Q&A / training session in regards to supplier services and supplier onboarding. Today we have our supplier onboarding team led by Andina, who will be doing the presentation. And then we have other folks from our supply chain management team. Just a couple of notes here. So after each slide, while Andina does her presentation, she will pause and ask for questions. So we are assuming there's going to be lots of questions. So I ask for some patience. If Andina could get through her slide, we will stop and we will answer all the questions as they come in. And then, of course, we also have the ability to put it in the chat if you have questions. The other part to this, and Andina will get into it a little bit further. So we kicked off utilizing PaymentWorks at the beginning of last year. And many reasons why we moved into PaymentWorks. And again, Andina will go over that. I think one thing that I sort of want to make sure we make clear is PaymentWorks is used for many different reasons why we moved PaymentWorks and supplier onboarding to that. One thing that we have learned through the last year is we're still trying to adapt the supplier onboarding team with PaymentWorks. There's still a lot of moving pieces, so it's not as simple as registering a supplier and then we're good to go. There's still a lot of reviews that take place, sort of checks and balances. So there were, for quite some time, longer than expected times for onboarding. And we look at those metrics on a monthly basis. And in the past several months, the great news is we've improved quite a bit with the turnaround times for supplier onboarding. Still not exactly where we want to be, but great strides in getting those times shorter. So we continue to ask for patience, and if there is urgent needs to onboard suppliers, please reach out to me. I will work with the supplier team to ensure that we get things done in a timely manner. So I appreciate everybody's patience as we dealt with this transition, and look forward to the continued success of PaymentWorks and our supplier team. So on that note, I will pass it to Andina. Thank you, everybody.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. As Vartan said, it is our hope to give you all some insight into our supplier services role. Onboarding for suppliers is increasingly complex. So keep in mind as we go over this demo that we are going to be reviewing like what covers 90% of the suppliers we onboard. There's always going to be a 10%, 5 to 10% of suppliers that just aren't going to fit this mold. It's really hard to get a one size fits all. And we're aware of that. And that's why we have office hours to kind of help you out with when we have those. Oh, you know what? I forgot to start sharing my slides. Give me 1 second. All right. All right. So these are the topics we're going to kind of come over. We're going to cover a little bit. Vartan kind of touched on it a little bit. It's like why we're using PaymentWorks. What are some differences between new requests and updates? Invitations, when to send them and how to send them. Searching for supplier information, some progress statuses for the various stages that we have in PaymentWorks for suppliers, and some common issues and errors that we kind of see a lot. So hoping that we can give you some insight into those and kind of clarify those.
Just so you know, and Dina, you're not, if you intended to share the screen, it's not showing right
Oh,
now.
well, that would be helpful, right? Let's see here. How come Oh, I forgot to push the button. Hold on.
There you go.
All right, now I'm sharing. Okay, now wait, I lost my slide. Hold on. All right, you see the screen, but I lost the button. Where did it go? Well, let's see if that works. That works. All right. All right. So what is PaymentWorks? Why are we using PaymentWorks? So supplier services use PaymentWorks to facilitate a connection between suppliers and UC Davis supplier records that are maintained in Aggie Enterprise Oracle. So we use them for both new suppliers and to update existing suppliers. So onboarding is by invitation only. Departments must send an invitation providing a specific UC Davis connection link to a supplier. So for suppliers, these payment works allows suppliers to enter and update their information in real time. Suppliers can have a PaymentWorks account already, but they need a specific account, a specific link to UC Davis to be sent to them. So when you have a new supplier that's not found in Aggie Enterprise, you submit this invitation to them. So PaymentWorks for UC Davis for supplier services verifies banking and tax information, reducing fraud. It screens for sanctions to ensure compliance with Office of Research Export Control. And our main reason for using PaymentWorks was to facilitate this connection for suppliers to UC Davis so that they have added extra protection for security guarding against fraud. And then one of our most missing elements was to provide visibility to campus. So with this visibility with PaymentWorks, we're also getting metrics, as Vartan touched on earlier. So we are going to be having a dashboard coming soon so that you can see volumes and turnaround times grouped in by our group so that you know what to expect and how to expect it. So right now, I roughly want to say we're running at about 5 to 10 business days. So you want to keep that time frame in mind before submitting or when you're submitting your onboarding or your update requests to have suppliers connect with us. I also want you to keep that in mind when you're asking for status updates. So within those time frames, we're just going to be there. They're coming through. We're reviewing them, and I want to say about 3 months ago, as Vartan was saying, we were running at about 20 to 30 business days. So 5 to 10 business days is looking pretty good, but we do know there's room for improvement. Um, so here we have, so this, oh no, I'll stop for questions after this slide here, but this part of what I want everyone to know and share is kind of it's going to be a crucial point for all of campus to know what to kind of information we want to send to the suppliers or to inform them for before we send them invitations. So it's a little bit of what to expect and what to know. So um, these are the key factors that are needed for all suppliers when they are connecting or onboarding with PaymentWorks. So each PaymentWorks account can only use a unique email address once per supplier record. So you want to be sure the email you are using to send invites to someone will be the owner of that account. So our supplier records are also set up with unique name and tax IDs and email factors. So this means the name and tax ID and email can only be used uniquely in our system. And if we ever get a ping that we have the same exact match with the system, it'll prevent it from being used again. So a legal name must match the unique tax ID. Foreign suppliers are slightly a little bit different, but that doesn't mean that they're not impacted by the same type of information. So sharing that information with them is also a good idea. Insurance and banking information, account names must match supplier legal name or acceptable DBAs and payee names when applicable. So not everyone's going to need insurance or banking information, but if they do submit it, they need to know that it should match whatever is going to be on their registration. Um, PaymentWorks facilitates the ACH and virtual card payment method onboarding with fraud indemnification. So both methods will be confirmed. PaymentWorks will validate and reach out to the supplier to confirm and validate banking information. And then something to know is that many suppliers choose virtual card thinking they're getting ACH in error. So let them know that there are some differences with those. And if they do accept credit card payments, there is going to be an outside verification to ask them about. And lastly, but most importantly, communicate to the suppliers to provide applicable name and address information on the registration to match supplier setup and invoices. So in a nutshell, the registration asks for corporate information and invoice information, but many times we just get corporate information that will cause delays when they haven't provided the information that is listed on their invoice and it doesn't match. So I'm going to pause now and see if there's any questions that we need to answer.
I have a question.
Adina? Oh,
Yes. Mhm.
Who's going?
I can't.
uh, I'll ask my question after you ask yours.
Okay. So like when we have a vendor that's either new or existing, should we, and if they were to have a shared email, like a general admin email for their, to match vendors, should we use that or should we be using the email that the individual that's helping us on the vendor side, should we be using their email?
So you want to use an email that is going to be the owner of the account. So it's more of a communication with the supplier to see who is going to be able to have access to that. So lots of times it's an individual that, like your salesperson or whoever it is, and they don't say they leave the company, but then they don't leave access for multiple users to have to get back into that account. So sometimes that's a little bit, there's know that that could happen. So
Right.
it's just a conversation with the supplier to say, whether or not they're going to be able to provide access to somebody else. And there's links and information on how to add multiple users so that they don't lose access. Um, but it's really you want an email that you know is going to get somebody. So a lot of times we get an AR or an info at, email, and those work just fine. A lot of times they get lost in a big inbox that no, there's multiple people that look at it, but no one's responding. So it just really depends. It's just know that, and here's and I'll touch on this later, but there, an email invitation is going to be sent to somebody, so they're going to have that email, but at the same time, when they register, they could change the email, and the email could be a different email.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to be the initial email for the invitation is going to be sent to somebody who's going to respond and know what to do with that and have access to that inbox. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll use that email to create the account, but their email that is used to create the account is going to be verified, so they do need access to that email inbox.
Okay. So if it comes to the case, like down to the case where they leave the company and they don't add additional emails or users, I'm sure there's a way to still send another invite to another employee from that company,
There
and they
is a
can.
way. Yeah, there is a way. And I think a lot of times the supplier has to deal directly with PaymentWorks to do it. Um, but it's still a messy kind of process. So it's way easier to have multiple.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be helpful if you would show us how to get multiple people on the invitation because I have the same issue is that finding a person to fill out the PaymentWorks form is the most laborious part of getting this done. And I often have to, like, customer service won't know what to do. So they turn it over to AR. And I get individual emails, not group emails.
Yeah, so there's not, I'm not really showing, there's not, so the original creator of the account would be the person adding additional users. So it's an internal side. It's going to be on the vendor side. So we have various cases where we are adding multiple. It's still, like Vartan says, we're still learning the ins and outs of this system. So I'm not quite sure how it affects some of the records. But we're moving through and gathering more information on how those work. And so far, in the cases that we've had with multiple invites to the same record, we haven't seen any issues yet. But it's still best for the suppliers to they basically request and add a new user and then they have access to it.
Um, is there any way to change a record without going through? Oh, so what happened with me is I had a vendor Sartorius who changed their uh, address in their record, but it didn't update to Aggie Enterprise. So is there a way that someone could change that address for me?
Well, we'll kind of touch on that. I mean, that's kind of a one-off question. That's kind of the outside. So we can meet in office hours to kind of go over those type of questions. But this form is going to be more like just general.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me add here real quick. So definitely want to address everybody's questions. And yeah, like Indina mentioned, this sort of forum is more general overview and training. If you have specific questions about particular vendors, I see in the chat, like Fleet Feet, for example, um, go ahead and either attend office hours uh, or send a help desk ticket. Or if it's urgent and you're needing to pay somebody really fast and you feel like it's been too long, you could email me directly and we'll go ahead and work and see what's happening. So appreciate those questions. Karen has her hand up.
Hi. So basically, my questions are very similar and all has to do with the unique email address. My question starts with suppliers already in the system and they want to change their terms of payment. So I'm getting these past due invoices or messages from their collections, and I sent them to AR, and AR told me, well, it's net 60, not net 30. So I sent them an invite and asked them to update their terms and conditions there. It's still pending. They are not doing it. They're not completing the link. They opened it. But in that case with the email, how would I have known? Because I sent it to the person sending it to me saying, no, that's not their terms. Where did I get those terms? And I said, here's how you change it. And she sent it on to her AR. So to have started that whole situation, should I have found out the unique email in the supplier first and send it directly to that email? Or how do you start it when it's already a supplier in place? And
So we're gonna go over some of that, and I'm gonna show you some places for things. To answer real quick, once we converted over a lot of our payment terms were kind of wiped clean. We sent out a lot of communication to suppliers to let them know that we were going to be overhauling, kind of, changing and if they wanted to change payment terms, they could. So, and there's ways for them to onboard and select new payment terms. And again, reach out, come to office hours, and we can review
thank
specific
you.
cases.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
So we'll continue. I have a feeling some of these questions are going to be answered as Indina proceeds with the presentation. So let's move forward with keeping in mind that there are questions in the chat, and if we still have questions after the presentation, then we'll go ahead and get those answered.
All right. So when to send PaymentWorks invitations is our next slide. Um, so when you have a new supplier who is not in any enterprise and you need to do a PO or a no cost or a non-PO payment, and you're not finding them in Aggie Enterprise, you want to send them an invitation. For existing suppliers, any supplier that needs an update to payment terms, name changes, legal or DBA, changes to the ownership of the company, if they've merged or they've moved, any address changes, that's when you want to send a supplier an invitation um, to onboard. The following, let's see, there's some suppliers that do not need to be added to Aggie Enterprise or to PaymentWorks. So anyone with an honoraria, research subject, fellowship payments, you want to utilize Candex for those. Reimbursements to employees or students, those can go through Aggie Expense. Also, if a student has graduated, we used to have onboard them too, but we also have an AP manual override for one-time payments there. And if you find you're not sure if you need to be adding them or not, you can jump into office hours and ask us either in accounts payable or into the supplier team. We can check for you and let you know.
I do want to add, ever since we implemented Candex, which was also at the beginning of last year, there's been over 2,400 unique individuals that would have, prior to Candex, have gone through the payment work supplier onboarding process, that we don't have to now onboard that individual. It's a much more streamlined way to go about those certain categories of payments. And if you feel like when you utilize Candex, there isn't a category on there that potentially you can use for your department, reach out to me and we'll talk. We have the ability to add categories specific to departments for departments' needs if it fits the business model. So any questions about Candex, please feel free to reach out to me. The less suppliers that we need to go through PaymentWorks and the supplier service team, the easier it is for everybody else.
Yeah, funny you said that. So since we've been working on this dashboard, some of the numbers that I looked up, our volume for PaymentWorks, like I said, was about 3 to 350 a month. In Oracle, we were at like 400 to 600 a month. So there's definitely been a decrease in the suppliers that we're onboarding because of Candex. Okay, so when sending an invitation to suppliers, there are two. It's hard sometimes to know when you need to send an invitation for updates and when not to. So first, you kind of need to know if they are connected in PaymentWorks or not connected, because they'll fall into these two categories. And it helps to know. And these next couple of slides are going to be a little more informational. And then after I've completed them, I'm going to actually show you what it looks like. So first, connected and non-connected. If you are in PaymentWorks, a connected supplier will have a green dot, and you can see here when you do a search for a supplier, it'll have this green dot here. It means it's connected. And if it doesn't have a dot, then it means it's not connected. In Aggie Enterprise, if you do a supplier search on their profile page, you will see it's about the middle of the page. If you're just on the front, when you open the supplier record, there's a word called PaymentWorks Request ID. If you see an ID there, it means they're connected. You can go into PaymentWorks and you'll see that green dot. If you don't see one, it means it's a non-connected with PaymentWorks. So it's an existing supplier missing a connection. There's no green dot, and you want to send them an invitation to onboard. When not to send a PaymentWorks invitation is when you do see that green dot. So if you see that green dot, do not send invitation. You want to locate the PaymentWorks user's email address and the department should inform the supplier to log into PaymentWorks and update their information for whatever you need. Lots of times it's usually an address or the payment terms like we've been talking about. There is a specific link for suppliers. They can take the general paymentworks.com one, but this one here takes them straight into a login for their account. This is different than what we use to get into PaymentWorks for UC Davis. So supplier PaymentWorks email they can log in and they find the supplier. You're going to need to open up on the onboarding section. It'll give you their information. You hit the account info and you can find their email address here.
So in PaymentWorks, where did you start to get to these areas? I'm not sure.
I'm going to show those in a few. So my next here is there are multiple ways to view supplier information. First, you want to search in Aggie Enterprise, and then you want to check in PaymentWorks. So there's lots of ways to find this information. And I'm going to stop sharing this demo. Hold on. Okay, hold on 1 second. All right, so I feel like we'll have more questions after I show. So first thing I want to show is how to search for supplier in Aggie Enterprise and find that connection. So you're going to go into suppliers. You hit this little page button. Wait a minute, am I sharing again? I'm sharing again, right? Okay. Manage suppliers. And you can search by name or by number. You want to pick kind of a unique portion of the name so that you can kind of find multiple, in case there's typos or there's multiple ones with different names or similar names. When you click on the supplier record, it takes you to this profile page. And here is where you see PaymentWorks ID along with the rest of the information. So if you see that PaymentWorks ID, it means they have been approved. Information that has been put into PaymentWorks has now been updated in this record. And moving forward, you should be good to go. So that's how you find it here in PaymentWorks, in Aggie Enterprise. To do a search in PaymentWorks, there's two tiles. There's multiple ways. One of the ways here to find that connected one, you want to go into Setup and Manage Supplier Portals. And from there, you're going to hit the Supplier tab. And from here, you can you can search by the portion of the name, but there's also, keep in mind, there's about 20 to 30,000 suppliers. And they have listed them here by addresses. So it takes a while sometimes if you search by name. So if you have the number, it is much faster. And so here is where you see the green dot. So this is basically the same information that is in Aggie Enterprise, but not always. So that's why I encourage you to go to Aggie Enterprise first to see if you have what you need. Active addresses will be here, and basic information will be here. So if they are connected here and you need an update, they're going to be something else. So the second place you want to go to is on the onboarding. You again take that number here, enter it here, and you will take you to their invitation and account information. From here, there's a lot of information that is useful. You want to hit this little arrow, and then 3 tabs will open up. This is the progress. So when you submit an invitation, when it's been approved, when the registration comes in, when it's been returned, when it's been canceled, all of that information is set here in this progress section. You can see who the registration was submitted by, their DBA name, legal name, and timestamp. Their account info here is listed here in their account details. So this is the person that you want to notify and say, you need to go log in. Here is the login link, the supplier link. You give them that link, give them this information, and they will go log in. Now, normally they would have this information on how to access their account, but just in case, we'll provide those information. Those ones won't change. This is where you find it. That's the link. They can get in and submit it. This is originally the information that was submitted. So you can see here that this email address, this is who, Aaron sent this email to this person. And it is a different email that actually created and registered the account. So you can have a different email go to the person and then have an account created. And this account was created in 2023. So that was even before we had, so it was already an existing one. They just used the same account. They created it. Now they have access. But again, there's a lot of information here that is going to be used for that, for knowing when to send an invitation for corrections or updates, or versus if it's not, if it's just a new registration, or if you just need to onboard them and they'll submit whatever information that they need, and we'll add that to the already existing supplier record. Okay, so I'm going to pause here and see what questions you have.
I have a question. I have a vendor, the registration stops at registration in progress. So, how can I find out what,
So one
if
of these
it's,
stages here.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go over a little bit of the stages later on, but there's a number of reasons for why they could be held up. Do you have any questions about what I showed right now?
I do, Andina.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 2024, we had a supplier go through PaymentWorks, and I see his profile, but it's not connected. And on Aggie Enterprise, I don't see a PaymentWorks request ID, but the vendor is on Aggie Enterprise. So do you
Okay,
know what might have happened?
so you submitted an invitation
Mm-hmm.
and it's just pending internal review, or it hit approved?
It doesn't, I can't access in PaymentWorks. I'm not able to access any information. I see the vendor, but I can't click on him.
Okay, so this again would be an office hours kind of a question to kind of see and walk you through. But this is also a good time to say, if you submitted the invitation, you can tell. So let's see. Oh, let's see. Sorry, let's use you. If you submitted it, you put your information here in this invitation initiator as you submitted these invitations, and then you have access. It'll pull up all the ones that you submitted, and you can see the various stages. So that's how you can find it. Or you can search by name and bring up like partial name and bring up all the ones with, oh, I can't remember. I know it just said cook. And so these will be all the ones that have the word cook in them. And you can open them up and see where they're at.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let me go back to slides. All right. Okay, so Okay, so now we've come to some of those frequently encountered common issues and progress stages, which is we've been kind of touching on already. So, um, invitation pending approval. So, invitations that are on hold can mean a couple of different things. And generally speaking, we're checking to see if they're usually around individuals that could be possible employees or that need to go through uh, Aggie expense for reimbursements that don't belong here. So, or they need to go to Candex. So if an invitation is still on hold after a couple of days, that usually means we're checking on something. It could be a possible duplicate or there's some errors in the submission. Some common things that we see that can kind of get your invitation returned are some unclear names. So a lot of times we get a company name and then there's also an individual name listed on it. So you want to submit your invitation with the vendor's company name so that it's clear that we're trying to add a company or we're trying to add an individual. Um, you can also list if you know if it's going to be an individual and they have a business name, you can list the individual's name and the DBA name next to it, so that that'll help you with searching for your invitations later on and letting them know which name they might need to be able to submit. Another one is incorrect supplier contact email. So if there's an email address that you're using and it ends in UC Davis, that's kind of a huge red flag. One, you're going to have issues logging in because it's going to take you to log in for that. And then you can't have an account. You can't be a user if you're already logging into the system. It doesn't let you do that. Um, so it'll end up having you register with the personal email anyway, so you want to just use that one. Um, so we usually hold those up and kind of ask for more information there sometimes. The other things that might hold things up are minimal descriptions of goods and services. If we get something that says goods, that's not really telling us what you're buying, and we kind of need to know, we're buying lab equipment or medical equipment or, pieces of equipment or supplies. If you say services, that really doesn't tell us anything. Is it speaking engagements? Is it web design? Catering services? We need a little more detail as to what is being purchased. It should be enough information to show what is being purchased, like goods, lab equipment, services, car, I'm renting a display case, so that we have some sort of idea for, there's further questions down the line in the registration that can be confusing when the supplier submits something, but knowing that the department is using the supplier for this reason will help us with some of those clarifications later on. Personalized message. So sometimes there's not a message in there, and sometimes there's a message in there that kind of looks like spam. So you want a personalized message to communicate a little bit something to the supplier so that they know this is coming from UC Davis. It's not spam. You want to let them know, hey, this is how we onboard you, and we're gonna buy this from you. So just fill this out, and then we can get moving forward. And it'll we see the message first at supplier services before when we're approving invitations, and then the supplier will see that message. The supplier won't see anything else except for that personalized message. So sometimes we'll end up rejecting invitations if we do see multiple invitations to the same supplier that already has a user account. And so again, we want them to try and go to the user account user to be added as an additional user, instead of sending multiples, because it creates separate accounts for them and the information I don't believe is connected. I'm still trying to confirm that with PaymentWorks, but
But
Um,
in the case that the person that is on that user email has left that company, then what?
if that person hasn't, then the company needs to reach out to PaymentWorks to get that account removed and changed into a new one. It's a little bit of a cumbersome process that I haven't heard how from beginning to end it works, but I do know that some people have been able to get back access back into it. Um, but it has to, you have to work through with PaymentWorks. It's the beauty of PaymentWorks is that it creates unique accounts so that no one can hack your stuff and get into it. But the beauty of, the bad part is that no one can get into their own account sometimes if that user leaves. So that's why we want to be able to communicate, hey, we're gonna send you this invitation. You're gonna be an account owner. It's gonna be created, and you want to have multiple. So after you've got an account created and we've approved and you're connected, please inform them to say, hey, make sure you get multiple users. Um, and I think we need to post the link for the instructions for how to do that somewhere and the steps, because I don't think we have that readily available. But PaymentWorks lists out all of the steps for the supplier on how to do that, and they can get that.
Thank you.
Um, but again, like we don't want to send them out. So you are able to cancel an invitation. So if you sent an invitation to somebody and it's been sitting there for like 30 days, we do eventually go in and cancel something that's been sitting there for a really long time. Um, but you can go in if you know it's not gonna be this email. They want something else. Go in, cancel it, and then resend a new one. And I want to say you can update it to change the email address. You can't use the same email address twice, but you can resend an invitation that has been canceled with the same email. So if it's been canceled and it's sitting there in the canceled um, portion of things, then you can open it up again and resend. But you have to be the original initiator of that invitation. And after these couple slides, I can go back in and show you some of that if we need to see that. Um, so there is a drop down list for the reason you're inviting the supplier. Surprisingly enough, there's only a few options on there, but we do see some that are incorrect, where in the description it says, "Hey, we're going to be uh, paying for services, a web design service," and then they list product on the drop down list. So a lot of times, because of the routing it has, we send those back and say, hey, can you please change this to service? And then vice versa. If we see that you're buying something and you've just said, now I'm paying for a service, we'll kind of send that back to you and say, hey, can you switch these? So just be mindful of what it is that you're selecting. Another one that we see is research participant. So we generally use research participant. We were using it for human subjects. A lot of times we do get suppliers that are participating in research, but that's not what the drop-down kind of list is used for. So you just want to just say they're providing services. They'll be an independent contractor of some sort. We don't always send those back because we can kind of tell them and it's minimal, but just something that we wanted to be aware of. And then if we see an invitation for a supplier that is connected, we are now starting to reject those and say, hey, please reach out to this user to see if they can add your user. And then again, if you have questions about anything that has been returned or submitted incorrectly, or we've been returned it and it wasn't clear why, jump into office hours with us and we can go over those. Okay, so these are our three most common. Well, first, do we have any questions about the
And,
invitation?
and Dina, there's a good question from Kathleen.
Mhm.
So do the vendors know there's an issue? Do they get notified, or is the onus on the campus staff member who launched the invitation to check it regularly and shepherd it through?
So the invitation at invitation stage, so that's going to be this first stage here. The second stage is when we've hit approve. So this first stage here, when we send it back for corrections on the invitation, it's going back to the department. So it's on the department to fill out all the invitation information of what it is that we're buying or who we're sending it to. And the information listed there is kind of correct. They know what we're buying and who we're buying it from. And so that's kind of the information that we want on the invitation. So if it gets sent back, it's going back to them. Moving forward, the stages, there's different so communication goes out to the department, the initiator who submitted the registration. Each time a stage is cleared, they get notification. If a registration is returned, and I'm going to go over those next, it it goes to the supplier because we're communicating now with the supplier for needing of the corrections. So at that point, I don't know if it's been returned. I don't know if the initiator gets a notification, but I do know they can see the stages. So campus should be looking and monitoring all of the stages if you're waiting for something, and they should be able to communicate with the supplier, hey, check this out. Again, it would be they're going to need that link to go into their account and log back in with that user account information and then access the registration again. So and I'll just move on to that one. So that's here. This return registration is this last one. It's one of our common ones. The return registrations can be for lots of different reasons, but it's mostly for corrections or verification of something. So it's let's it it let's see. So, like in the beginning, when I mentioned that the names don't match or banking information is different or something came in wrong, that is what we're returning them. When we return them, we are returning them with information as to what needs to be reviewed or corrected. A lot of times we're not sure which way they're going, or we have information that we can tell it should be this instead of this, or we have a format issue where they've put two names side by side, and you're like, well, I need the legal name to be the legal name, and I need the DBA name to be the DBA name. Can you just clean those up so that it doesn't come in when it integrates mistakenly? Now, we also send those back because if we leave them in bad format when they submit an update, say they have banking changes or a name change and they're going to fix it and they update it, it actually forces us to update all of their banking information and their address information because it assumes that. So things change and it requires like 4 approvals instead of just the one. So we send it back at registration, get it cleaned up, and then when it integrates, it just integrates once. They don't have to worry about any updates unless there's an actual change. So some common things that we do is for format issues, banking and insurance information names, like I mentioned earlier before, those don't match up. Sometimes they have insurance for a parent company and it doesn't list that they're associated in any way. So we don't necessarily approve things that are mismatching. We don't send any information back for mismatching insurances, but that is something to be aware of to let them know. We do send it back for name in differences in banking information because we want the name on the account to match the legal name. Another common error is we see individuals selecting credit card, like Payment Plus, Virtual Pay. We send those back because we've found 90% of the time they think they're selecting ACH, but they didn't. So we'll send those back to say, hey, did you really mean to check credit card processing? And if you are, just send it back to us without any changes, and we'll send you the verification and get you set up for it. But if you didn't, then please take the opportunity to submit ACH. A lot of times ACH process is there's steps for the ACH process that PaymentWorks is asking for, and they want to collect. They're collecting their banking statements or a stub, some name relation, bank address, and they're verifying all of that. So if they don't get that, then they flag it and they let us know. They don't always hold it up, but sometimes it does get held up. So if they think it's really, really fraud or they can't validate it, they won't hit approve on it. And that's PaymentWorks doing, not us. Um, so that kind of takes us a little bit to this pending internal review. So the pending internal review is where you'll see once the supplier has submitted their registration to us, it gets dumped into, okay, and it's now in our court. It goes through PaymentWorks. They're checking TIN matching banking information, address validations. So they don't, so if there's an error in the address, it's going to say invalid address when it comes to us. PaymentWorks does their reviews, says this is what we found. It's up to you to decide what you want to do with it. So then it goes through our various processes. It goes through tax accounting review. It goes through export and control review. So just because it has a sanction, they said, hey, there's a sanction here, it doesn't mean we automatically approve it. And we have to review what they find. Export control has to sign off on it. Withholdings get reviewed for foreign suppliers or out-of-state suppliers, depending on services. So unfortunately, it doesn't tell us it doesn't inform campus what stage it's at, but pending internal review means it's with us and it's going through our various checks and balances. It's also meaning supplier services is doing their review of their format, making sure everything matches, making sure the attachments came in correctly, and then conflict of interest. So just because they're related to somebody here or they were a previous employee doesn't mean that we're going to reject them, but it also doesn't mean we're going to approve them. We review the information they've given us, and then we reach out to procurement and get some guidance on that. So we're doing all of that collecting of information and doing what we need to do with it in order to make sure the records are what they need to be. The approved stage, so the vendor registration has been approved by your organization, but is not displaying as connected. So this is a common one for existing suppliers. So existing suppliers need a secondary connection. So when a registration has been approved and it says it's not connected, and it's usually speaking for those, we review the supplier records in Aggie Enterprise to make sure that we have everything that was needed. And then we update manually the information in Aggie Enterprise so that it matches what's in PaymentWorks. Whereas if it's a new supplier and they're not in Aggie Enterprise, it just goes through integration and just automatically goes in, and it's usually in at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. depending on daylight savings time. But it's automatically in there and it's readily available after those times within a couple of minutes usually. But with the existing suppliers, there is a secondary. So approved means you have everything in there that you need. If you see it's approved, it should have that PaymentWorks ID in the registration at in Aggie Enterprise. All of the address information or banking information that they gave us is now in Aggie Enterprise. It's just not going to show you that green dot connection if you were to search for it in PaymentWorks until our internal PaymentWorks admin team manually updates the connection. We did have recently some issue with our manual connection that was backlogging over 100 suppliers that had not been connected, but we've cleared that out and we try and keep it pretty low. But again, it's just a manual process that can take a couple more days depending on volume and timing of that. But please check in Aggie Enterprise. If you see the information and the addresses that you need, there's also tags in there to kind of indicate, the PaymentWorks tag, or if it's been ACH, there's a tag at the site level. All of that is there for you to know that it has been there. The only thing that cannot be done in an approved status that a connected can is that the supplier can't submit an update. Now, generally speaking, they've just submitted registration and they're not going to necessarily need an update, but eventually they will need one. So if you ever find that they submitted something and they're like, oh no, I submitted it wrong and I need to go fix it and it's not connected yet, you want to reach out to vendor desk and let us know, hey, I need this one connected because they need to submit an update. And we'll get that checked in real quick. Again, registrations. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. Any more questions on that? And then, is any of that clear? Do you have any questions on these? I can't see if anybody is.
We're
Okay, so
answering the questions as they come in.
okay.
The last thing I see, does the PaymentWorks site have a translation function? That's a great question.
So the PaymentWorks site does not have a translation, but if you go on to PaymentWorks, they have their version of KBAs there. I do know they have different translations, like different languages. The information is there in different languages, in a number of them. I want to say I've seen Spanish, but I haven't seen any of the others. But that is something that we could look into and see where we would find more of that and maybe pinpoint those resources. But I do know PaymentWorks does offer different languages for instructions. I don't know that the actual registration would come in to them in different languages.
Thank you, Andina.
All right, so last slide I have here for you is best practices for sending invitations. So this kind of just touches base on a lot of what we've already been talking about. You want to confirm with the supplier and the individual cannot be paid through another method, Candex, P-card payment, the manual onboard or manual override, sorry. Search an Aggie Enterprise first, see if you have what you need, see if they are connected. And if they are not, then, when in doubt, send an invitation and then we can also check and see and let you know. The steps for how to send invitation and how to do searches and how to submit an update, those are all in our KBAs. They are our three most popular links. They're going to be in the slide deck when we share them. But we send those out a lot in some of our ServiceNow tickets. So the information is there on our website. There's 2 different pages for PaymentWorks. Again, those links will be available. And one of the links you can even send to the supplier. It gives them kind of the basic layout of what to expect. Again, in those KBAs, there are more definitions of the stages for invitation, like delivered email, undelivered email, opened, clicked, canceled, pending approval, and invitation rejected. Same thing with registration. The onboarding status KBA has the what not started, it's incomplete, in progress. There's like 9 or 8 or oops, sorry, 10 or so different stages, and they have definitions for each of those in those KBAs that you can kind of review. Check to see if somebody has already submitted an invitation for that supplier and it's pending, so you can kind of just follow their progress and not send a duplicate registration or invitation. Include DBA names. So we want to kind of encourage that because a lot of times we don't see those and it's hard to get them added afterwards or recognize or even search for them if they don't include that. Use an email address. Encourage them to use email addresses to monitor. Include detail purposes. Again, we want to know the reasons. And if for whatever reason, so, say you are paying an honorarium to a foreign supplier, they cannot use Candex. So we can't always tell that they're foreign. So you want to communicate that and say, can't use Candex, they're foreign. Please add to Aggie Enterprise for honorarium and or human subject payment or fellowship. And then, circling back to like what we kind of said, when you're asking the supplier to submit registration and information, please have them provide information and name and address information that is going to be used for their supplier record and their invoices so that they can match. And hopefully this will prevent any delays that we see. All right. So that's kind of what I have to share now, unless somebody needs me to show them anything else or they want to see anything else. I can quickly show that.
Quick question for Andina. I did just post it in the chat, but can you find that link for the translation related stuff from PaymentWorks? I can't find it right now. I'm on their website. I'm looking through like the pay information, knowledge base, and all that. And if you're searching like Spanish or translation, like nothing pops up.
Yeah, I would have to spend some time looking. I don't have it
Okay.
readily available.
And I know I sound like a broken record. I post it multiple times in there, but if we can get kind of like a cheat sheet for suppliers, and so like I'm really big on the foreign ones, but if we can have like these hyperlinks and everything in one spot, it would just be so helpful and probably eliminate us hounding you guys in the help desk.
Hyperlinks for the suppliers?
Like the shortcut to the payment works, like help the translation stuff like as one thing, or if you need to go in and change information, go here. So kind of like a cheat sheet for it, because right now all the information's in a bunch of different places, it feels like.
So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, you don't sound like a broken record. I think it's very valid what you're asking for, and we are going to work on that.
Okay.
I think that, yeah, I agree. I think that'll be a big help. So,
yeah, I
we'll work
think
on it and
yeah, we've been mostly focusing on trying to get information that's coming in. We haven't really focused on like the different options for suppliers. So, but yeah, that is something to work on.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Are there any other questions?
Hi, I have a quick question. I work with a lot of universities as vendors that, just like us, they have so many different departments that are not necessarily connected to each other. Um, and so far, like I've had one that they had like accounting set up their account, which I think for them it would be easier because hopefully that person can help with all their departments. But moving forward with like other universities that are not connected that have like, like multiple departments and so many addresses, would they technically need to be under just one PaymentWorks account?
So that is a good question, and that is something that I have been going back and forth with right now with PaymentWorks, because universities and like county offices that have or hospitals that have different departments, it does make it kind of difficult. The registration is a one size fits all, but it doesn't always address all. So this is a question for kind of like that 10% that I was talking about, that
Mhm.
these kind of rules don't necessarily apply. The general rule for a supplier registration, it comes in if you're giving us ACH information, it's going to be for the entire record. And for most companies and most individuals, that works. For universities or county offices, not so much. So it's
Mhm.
been a little bit of a struggle for us to figure out what works best. We've tried it a couple of ways where we've put the ACH information just at the address for the registration that came in, because it's department specific, but
Mhm.
we don't have a clear-cut way to know if the information that they're giving us is only for that address or if it's okay for the whole, for whole of campus. Like there's a central payment place. So like the university that you've signed them up with accounts receivable, they've given us the banking information that they're going to accept payment for all departments all over across their entire campus. That's going to work. That's going to be great. But for others who only want check or they all have different ACH accounts, it's really difficult to pinpoint when to add it at an address site versus the entire record. And I've been asking PaymentWorks, should we be doing this? Should we be having multiple users? Like, how does that work? And I haven't got a clear enough answer yet to know how to answer that. But this would be something that supplier team would work one-on-one with you. At either office hours or you create a ticket and we work on it back and forth is kind of our only solution right now. But yeah, that is a tricky one.
Okay, yeah, so just case by case for now. I know
Yeah.
some of them have reached back out because they don't even know how to track the payment on their side. So I'd be like, okay, this is what went out, and they have to go to their people to find it. But okay, then
Yeah,
something
it's
comes up.
it's yeah. I think we're probably going to need to focus more like, we're hearing too that everyone needs to have some sort of more information for the supplier to kind of know
Mhm.
what's coming. Like I said, the main topics that we talked about today earlier, giving them that basic information is going to be immensely helpful for kind of the setup. These one-off ones with banking information kind of gets a little bit tricky.
Um, Real quick, Indina, that is the end of the presentation in itself, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, happy, we're going to stick around. We're going to answer questions. I just want to make sure everybody knows that the presentation in itself is over. Indina, thank you so much. Great job on going through everything. So we do have some follow-up items that we will look into, specifically the FAQs for foreign suppliers, and some of the other things that I'm reviewing as we speak on the chat. So thank you for the feedback. More to come. But otherwise, if you don't have any questions, thank you so much. And for those who are sticking around, ask away now.
Hi, this is Whitney. I have a quick question.
Mhm.
And I kind of had to pop in and out, so I really apologize if this was already covered. But do you have anything that has like screenshots of what the vendor or supplier sees on their end to kind of help me say, click this, do this, like
Uh,
dummy proof it? I
Yeah,
apologize if you
no,
already
that
did
that
that.
that did come up, and that is one of the things that we need to kind of work on and focus on. There
Okay.
is not, just because the registration is a little bit dynamic in that if you choose this, then it's going to ask for this type of
Oh
information. So
yeah,
like
absolutely.
then you're like creating these screenshots is would have multiple avenues. Um, so if we do come up with something, just keep in mind that it's either going to be like as an individual, like this is what it's going to tell you, or you're going to be a company. So those two type of structures, and it covers mostly kind of the most of that. But then it goes down into like, are you performing services, or are
Yeah.
you coming from out of state? Are you coming from a different country? And those are really kind of hard to pinpoint. Um, I should have put, and I do have some stuff to show, but there are some common questions that we do get on registrations that I just thought of right now, surrounding like insurance for like individuals. Sometimes you're performing services and you don't have insurance, how to get around those type of things. And
Mhm.
but I feel like I've done enough with this in preparation for this registration, for this presentation, to kind of give out some of our common issues and address and maybe update our website with some of those FAQs that we've, to give more information.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for doing this presentation also.
Thank you.
And Dina, just gonna throw this out there as well as to you, Barton. But I think another thing that would help also is so we, payment works. Yes, there's hiccups here and there, but the next step also would be to help how when the invitations get sent, and how does payment works see it, or if we could get that point of view, like from PaymentWorks end, if I'm making any sense at all. So that
You,
way,
yeah, no, you do.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
yeah, I will tell you, a lot of what they do is sort of proprietary to them.
Okay.
So we'll ask questions about certain parts of the onboarding process
Right.
and vague responses, I think, at times, which so sometimes we're sort of in the dark as well, when it comes to specifically how they're approaching the onboarding process on their end. Is that fair to say, Andina?
Yes. Yes. So
We have the same questions.
Okay.
so I mean, Elira, are you asking for like screenshots of what PaymentWorks is looking at or reviewing, or are you asking like what does it look like after we hit and approve? Like
After,
what messages are sent being
yeah.
emailed?
Yeah, just after. I think it'll be nice to see the full picture from beginning to end, how as I send an invitation to supplier ABC, and then it goes through, you know, supply chain, and then it goes to PaymentWorks. I think it'll be nice just to see the full scope of picture from beginning to end. And I think, I don't know, I just feel like we have a piece of the puzzle in the front in the up front, but then it's the middle and the end that gets really blurry.
Mhm. Yeah, I think if we work on this like view of what the supplier sees, you'll get a better
Yeah.
picture of what like I said, there's lots of different variations though, so it's going to be still kind of generic. I will say that PaymentWorks, they're it's kind of hard to find some stuff on their website, but I do have some popular links that when a supplier needs help with something, because the suppliers do email us directly at the vendor
Yeah.
desk, because they have trouble finding an actual link on how to update their remittance address or how to add a user, how to change their banking or their payment terms. So the payment works, and I don't know what it looks like for the supplier when they once they've approved it and they
Oh,
have their own access to their account. I don't know what that view looks like. PaymentWorks, they show a couple of screenshots which are in their links,
they're
uh,
removed, huh?
but I don't have access to that kind of view. I mean, I have it in our testing, but one thing about testing is that it is not equivalent of what is in real life. So it's
Fair.
a sanitized view. Oh, it looks like this, it's perfect. And then, I get a screenshot from a supplier and I'm like, I have never seen that before. I'm sorry. I know you said you updated your banking account, but I really need you to cancel it and then kind of resubmit it because I'm not seeing it. I'm showing you my screenshots, you're showing me your screenshots, and it's not the same. So,
And do you foresee future um Zoom meets regarding just solely on foreign vendors?
future meets.
Yeah, sorry, my earbud came off. Future meetings just regarding foreign vendors only, like another Zoom, you know, um, class kind of a thing.
I mean, all of this information is the same for foreign suppliers. I haven't really seen any. The only kind of issue I have seen with not being able to submit something with a foreign supplier is languages. So, and we've been able to communicate like emails kind of back and forth on how to kind of get around some of those things by letting them know like banking seems to trip them up a lot
Mm-hmm.
within the registration. And again, I don't know what that looks like on the payment work side. I just
Yeah.
get the information. Now, it's always a little bit weird because they have the account information, but I don't know what payment works is forcing them to give them in order to put it through because we just see the information on their invoices and it should just translate, but
Yeah.
it's again their process.
Yeah, I think one of the big takeaways from today for us is more clarity, maybe more instruction, uh, FAQs on foreign suppliers. I think that's a big takeaway, and we're already on it. We're going to start working on something because I think there is some confusion there. So yeah, I can assure we're going to have something out for that soon.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the feedback.
Andina, are you able to clarify again why it's important that a vendor is connected?
So the connection portion it pertains to whether a supplier, I mean, it's literally the whole point of having PaymentWorks. So PaymentWorks is so that a supplier can submit their information to us if it at any point changes. So if they need an address change or an update change or a phone number change, a banking change, any type of change, they can log in, access it, and submit it to us so that we have it real time and update it. If they're not connected, they cannot do that. So they can submit their information like to us if they're existing and they're just waiting for that connection. So it's approved but not connected. There's a little bit of a delay in allowing them to go submit any updates or changes that are needed because they're not connected. But anybody that's new to it and they get connected right away, and eventually everybody is connected that comes through PaymentWorks so that they have access to that.
I have a question. If an existing vendor wants to change their address and they're struggling with PaymentWorks, at any time can the vendor desk update that in Aggie Enterprise for them, or is that not allowed?
It's we really there are some exceptions. Like I said, there's outliers that, are having trouble. We really need to push going through PaymentWorks as best as possible, and we can attempt to assist them with that. And generally speaking, we can get them figured out. They figure it out, and we get it through, and then we update it accordingly. In those events that it just doesn't happen, so there's a lot of like software companies that are just online that need to be added for purchases that don't have anybody. So, but they're like, hey, here's our information, but we don't have anybody that's going to update or do anything. And you can do whatever you want with it or not, but so we can onboard those. But there are again safeguards and steps that are long and tedious and manual. We're not going to add anybody that doesn't have a tax ID. Foreign ones don't necessarily need a tax ID, but they're also going to need to show something with their legal name and address, an invoice or some sort of information needs to come in. Like it doesn't just come out of nowhere. We have to find some place for it before we add them. So there's manual steps and safeguards that, we go revert back to, but it's really, really beneficial to our team and to the university to go through PaymentWorks.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question on that. I have a vendor that updated their remit to address in PaymentWorks, and they said they did it at the beginning of January, but it's still not reflecting in Aggie Enterprise. Is there a time limit on how long that takes?
So we are a little bit delayed with updates. We've been focused on a little bit of things, but my next phase is to clear out a lot of our updates. Again, you can jump into office hours if you need something like that, or submit a ticket saying, hey, this one submitted it, and we can get to those one-offs and until we can clear out some of our updates. The updates for PaymentWorks is changing their it's a separate section in PaymentWorks for updates versus registration. So we've been focusing on registrations and getting those through and rolling, and we have been now. So now we need to focus on the updates. The updates come in, and there's a lot of them, but a lot of them are not really updates. They're just sending us a W-9 again, and it's got zero information that is different. So we're just like, okay, click, 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 and then we kind of miss out. The information ones that have addresses or actual changes kind of get lost in the lines of those. So we do need to focus on that a little bit. But again, if you're finding that something hasn't been and you need it, just ping us and we'll get on it.
And you said that's in the office hours.
You can ping
I
us in
did send
office
an
hours.
email. I did send an email, so it's on a blanket, so it's on, we get invoices weekly, so I'm just kind of storing the invoices right now because they can't be
Okay.
paid.
Okay. Yeah. Just ping me directly today, and then I can go check it out.
Okay.
Or if you want to
Well,
go
I
jump,
sent an email. I
if you
sent an
want to,
email yesterday
okay.
to the vendor help desk, so.
Okay. Or you can jump into office hours right now. Esther or Christine is probably there. She can go in and check it and find the update for you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hi,
Um,
Andina. Mine's
mhm.
kind of piggyback off of Jen's regarding the payment terms. And I actually did submit something to the vendor help desk along with the ticket. And I think mine has been since August that the payment terms haven't been adjusted. So I will go ahead and pop in to the office hours as well. But I just had another quick question. When when PaymentWorks was kind of going live, were the vendors that were already in our system made aware that this change was happening? Or is it just that, hey, I'm going to create a PO for you, said vendor I've worked with, and then what we're seeing is now that it's taking months for them to get paid because they weren't aware of this update.
So before we moved into Oracle, so that
Hmm.
was a year before PaymentWorks. Before we moved into there was mass communication that it went out to all existing suppliers that were going to
Okay.
be converted into Oracle, asking them to select from one of our payment terms. So that was 2 years ago.
Okay.
Um, if they didn't, they were notified that it was going to be set to net 60, which is kind of where they're probably
Yes.
at.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
Now, there's a couple of ways to kind of update those. You can invite them and they can onboard and then they can see their options and then we'll update those payment terms. That doesn't change any existing PO that is out there. So if you have an existing PO that has bad terms, you need to go into the purchasing room at office hours and say, I have this PO. I need you to change these PO terms one time. And then the supplier is going to onboard and they'll do that for you. Usually it's Stephen Kobayashi who does that for me in the event that I see some that have been asked. But purchasing usually does that. You can also go to the assigned buyer. Sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. The system generated POs don't give you guys access to them, so they have to be done by somebody in purchasing until the record does get updated.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's no way for us to change them without them coming through.
The onboarding.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for your help and for the workshop today.
Yeah. Thank you, Crystal.
Mhm.
So I do want to answer a question, Mike, if you're still on the call, about the ROI. And I think what we failed to do at the onset of this workshop is to explain sort of what PaymentWorks does for us. So it's the vendor onboarding tool, but there's so much more than that. ACH payments made to vendors via ACH is done through PaymentWorks. In the past, we used to have to house banking information in our financial management system. That's a big red flag in terms of liability involved with us housing payment information. We no longer do that. All the housing information now is within PaymentWorks. So that information is no longer exchanged. Confidential information, W-9s, so on and so forth. Again, still there within PaymentWorks. What else? Oh, a huge part, identification. So if there is some sort of ACH fraud involved, PaymentWorks provides identification to where it's sort of like an insurance. The fraud, they would take the liability of the fraud, and that's a big thing. ACH fraud is rampant out there. It's a huge concern. So we're covered in that sense. So lots of different pieces to PaymentWorks as to why we utilize them. Again, I don't think we sort of explained that in the very onset of this workshop, but all things to factor in when we do go through the review process, the ROI, and see how things are working for us. Hope that answers that question or addresses some of the concerns about the ROI. Okay. Any other questions?
Can you provide the field links that you guys provided early? It says important for the workshop, and I missed it because I got kicked out earlier, then I logged in again.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry, you want to see which one?
Oh, the link that you guys provided field link has info like important informations for the meetings. So I just want to get those links again.
Oh, okay. I don't know what links you guys dropped in the chat, but there are going to be a lot of links in the slides, and so you'll get a copy of the slides also.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Crystal. Oh, yes. It's really more about the impact of requiring vendors to use. Yes, correct. Yeah. I'll really be curious because again, we'll have a review with PaymentWorks here in the coming months. And these are all questions that we already have for PaymentWorks as we do our annual review, especially it being our first year. I think, Crystal, we could end the recording.